Hello everybody, Brad the Guitologist here, and welcome to part 2 of our Ampeg VT-22 service and demo video. If you'll recall, at the end of part 1, we had some problems with this thing humming and giving off a bunch of noise, but also it was very, very quiet. So in this video, we're going to troubleshoot the quietness and see if we can find the source of the issue. If that sounds like something you'd be interested in, please stick around. At the end of this video also, we're going to do a demo, so definitely stick around for that. Yeah, another note, you know, this hum that I'm experiencing is kind of consistent with what I would expect to hear from like a preamp tube, a bad preamp tube, but also it's just very, very low volume. I mean, I've got this channel cranked, and I'm standing right in front of the amp, and you shouldn't be able to do this right in front of one of these without it just blasting you out of the room. You know, very low volume, kind of distorted as well, output. So let's continue troubleshooting. I'm gonna have to take this back out and back to the drawing board on it. Okay, again, whatever's causing the problem is common to both channels. Here's channel 2 down here, and as we can see here, past the reverb, it goes through the reverb recovery stage. Man, let's see. Right here, H. Yeah, this is the end of the line for channel 2, and it ends at H, and H ties in right here. So it has to be really from here on, from between here and the output, or somewhere in the power. It very well could still be issues with the bias circuit, maybe. I did check all of that stuff, so I doubt that, but we'll keep that under our hats for the time being. But I'm gonna suspect it's between where that ties back in right there, that H, and here somewhere. I can pretty much almost eliminate the output tubes. I don't think that that's the problem. I did dig up an old set of 7027s that I had, and pop those in as substitutes, and it's exactly the same. So I think I can pretty much eliminate the output tubes, not necessarily the surrounding components, but the tubes for sure. But I'm pretty confident it's probably going to be between the output and here. And really, you know, what's the main thing between there? This 6A and 8, which I can tap on, and it goes tink, tink, tink. All right, here we are with this Ampeg VT-22 once again. I have changed a lot of the coupling capacitors on this first board, and I've moved them to the top side to make it easier in the future for future technicians, and believe me, this is a good thing. But I think I've located the problem. Right here, in addition to having weak tubes, over here we have V5. Cathode is supposed to be 190 volts, 310 on the plate, and 0.3 volts right there on the grid of that tube. Okay, so that's V5, grids 1, 2, and 3. So let's get our probe. Okay, here is V5. Okay, pin 1, 330 volts. Okay, so that's not too bad. The cathode is supposed to be 190 volts. That is 322 volts, so that's way off. So we've got a problem with the conductivity there on this. Now let's check out the grid, and you can kind of see why. It starts out, the grid begins, when I first put the probe on it, it begins about 250 and then starts to come down rapidly, and it increases in volume. Okay, figured out the main problem with this thing, and it was that resistor right there. That is resistor R38, and what it is part of the bias for this half of this 12 DW7 V5. I'm sorry, you can't read that, but that is V5. So this tube right here, we have, okay, here's our grid. Let's see. Sorry. Here's our grid. It's supposed to be 0.3 volts, but it was reading way up there. It wasn't supposed to be. The reason it was is because this R38 right here, which is this guy, is open, completely open. So if R38 is open, what are the consequences of that? Let's look again. That's actually our bias resistor. So without that R38 in place, basically what we had was this 190 volts that's supposed to be on the cathode here, was going through this 1K resistor and then coming over here through this 1 meg resistor, and whatever that drop is, the resulting voltage was ending up here. Also, the tube wasn't conducting because of that. Excess voltage here wasn't conducting hardly at all, so we ended up with a massive inflated voltage up here as well. So this tube was completely out of commission, pretty much. So it was conducting very, very little. So almost none of the signal was getting through. Most of it was getting choked off, and was basically just building up. It was just getting backed up here and then wasn't going any further through this cathode follower. So that was the problem. These DW7s, let's see, this is one half of it, and I'm not sure. I can't remember what this is. Probably the AEU half, because they're using this as a cathode follower. I've ordered some more 12 DW7s. We're going to replace all the DW7s in this. I've already replaced the 6AN8. He sent me with a new quad of, this thing came with a new quad of JJ tubes, so we're not going to have to mess with those, I don't think. This 6AN8 is a little bit microphonic, but it's the best one that I had, and they did not have any left in stock at Tubes and More, so rather than play roulette with the internet and see if I get one, I'm going to wait until I've determined whether or not that 6AN8's slight microphonic quality is going to disrupt things enough to make it worth trying to track one down. I looked through most of my stash. I did find a couple of those and used the least microphonic one between what I had and what they already had. So hopefully that'll be okay. But I think replacing these 12 DW7s, especially considering the punishment that this one has taken with all that voltage on the grid and basically just sitting there building up heat, I'd say that tube is probably pretty much shot, if nothing else. Replacing those is probably our best bet. And then I think this thing is going to be ready to go. But essentially, after replacing that, our volume is back. It's going to sound pretty darn good, the way these things are supposed to sound. So let's stick around. We'll replace some DW7s, and then we'll give this thing a test. Oh, and also I realized that some, Ampeg purists may be scoffing at my putting these replacement capacitors up on top of the board. Some of them might even be scoffing that I replaced any capacitors at all. But the capacitors that were in here, these were the type used in a lot of Magnavoxes. I only replaced these. I did not replace those chiclet type caps, but I did go through and replace these. We had one that was up against that resistor, if you'll recall, that one right there, that discolored one. So it had to have been on its way out. The rest of these, some of these are a little bit conductive, so I'm not going to leave these in the amp. I mean, they probably would have worked, but there's no sense in leaving these old things in the amp. These aren't the best caps you can get anyway, and I think these are going to be a lot better, sound a lot better, more reliable, and better in the long term. And putting them on top is going to make servicing a hell of a lot easier. I would suggest anybody, if you have one of these, just to go ahead and put your components on the top of the boards as you replace them. It's so hard to get under there, and why try to use both hands and look on this side and then look underneath and then look up and then underneath and try to get your components lined up when you can just do it from the top. To me, that makes a hell of a lot more sense, but I don't know. To each his own, but this is the way I'm doing this. And I think if I get any of these in the future, I will do it this way by default unless someone tells me not to. So anyway, there is one last shot of the inside of the amp. And I believe now we are ready to give it a test. All right, and finally, one more thing I thought we would take a look at since we have this amp. And I also have a Fender twin reverb silver face, and we're going to compare how much these things weigh. Buddy, we're not weighing you. Get back. Okay, here is the Ampeg, and let's see if 88 pounds is what they weigh, or if this is some kind of a ploy to lie to you. Ooh, look at that. No, it's topping in about. Let's see, can you even see it? No, you can't see it. Let's see. All right. So much for the idea of tripod. As you can see, it's about 91 pounds according to my scale. And this does have a replaced speaker, so that difference could be in that speaker. For comparison's sake, let's check a Fender twin reverb. Okay, here's a Fender twin reverb silver face I just happen to have right now in for repair, and this one has a couple of eminence, a red coat Tonker, and a Patriot Swamp Thing, and those are actually pretty big magnets, so those should be representative of kind of the high side of what a Fender twin reverb should top in at. So let's try weighing this sucker. Let's see how it compares. Let's see. This one weighs in with the biggest speakers pretty much that you can get as far as magnets. This one only tops in about 85 pounds. So a little bit less. I mean, actually, I guess it's those extra few pounds that really seem to make the difference, because I'll tell you what, the Ampeg, it only weighs 91 pounds according to my scale, but it feels like 150. It might as well be. You will definitely want trucks if you get one of these, or casters, whatever you want to call them. You definitely want to get a set probably and put some on there if you're going to move it around a lot. This guy's in a church, so it doesn't really matter much to him, but to you guys, if you tour or are going to take that anywhere, you will want them. Check out the difference in size also between the VT-22 and a twin reverb. You see the thickness on the top. There's the twin reverb. Look at the difference in thickness. I mean, this thing sticks out a full extra 2 inches on the front, and it goes all the way to the floor, whereas that one has casters on it which kind of lift it up, and still the Ampeg is a little bit taller. So compared to we all might look at a twin reverb and say no thanks, I don't want to carry that beast around, but compared to this Ampeg VT-22, the Fender twin reverb looks downright diminutive. Alright, we're ready to test this big bad boy out, and we're going to start with channel 1, and channel 1 is the one with distortion, so we're going to start with no distortion at first. I'm going to use my 2000s Telecaster American Standard with the TV Jones in the neck and the Seymour Duncan in the bridge. Okay, so that's without any distortion at all, and the volume is less than halfway up. Let's put a little distortion in, and you'll see kind of what it sounds like and why most people are kind of usually down on this distortion on this. don't know if it's coming through on the camera, but here in the room, it just has a little bit of just buzz that kind of seems separate from the main body of your tone. The buzz just kind of sets off over here and just buzzes, which is kind of a weird thing. But the more you crank it up, actually, the more that effect sort of disappears. So if you're playing loudly and you want some of that little bit of distortion, you know, it is not as bad the louder you play, because I think you're actually starting to get some tube saturation in there as well. I'll show you what I mean. Distortion all the way up, and I'm going to dime the gain about as much as I can stand it in this room. Same volume level with no distortion at all, and you'll see how much the tubes are responsible for that tone. So that's channel 1. Let's move on to channel 2. And whichever channel you are not using on these, I highly recommend turning the volume and all the controls all the way down if you're not using that channel. Otherwise, you're just introducing noise. Okay, so that's kind of the clean. Now again, you have these switches up here which actually change the position more or less of this pot, like the starting point, the 0 point. So it'll move it up and down the spectrum depending on where you put these selectors. And there's one for the high, which gives you an ultra high selection, and there's one for mid, which gives you a center point in the 300 hertz, a center point in the 1000 hertz, and a center point in the 3000 hertz. So it moves that Polarity. So you can see you kind of get, you can take out a lot of that mid-range and kind of get more of a black facey kind of a tone, and you can go all the way from that sort of thing and have flexibility to go all the way to a more of a Marshall-y kind of. So hell yeah, you can see why so many people, in spite of the weight of these things, really make the sacrifice and get one anyway, because they're so extremely versatile. You can get everything from blackface kind of Fender twin tones all the way up to that kind of killer Marshall-y mid-rangey overdrive growly sort of thing that you find in early Judas Priest and all the old metal that we like so much. But yeah, you guys, if you find one of these for a decent price, think real long and hard about your back and how much punishment it can take. And if you decide that your back can take the punishment, get one of these suckers, because they are extremely badass. But yeah, that's pretty much it for this video. Thank you guys for watching. Hit the subscribe button below for more videos like this in the future. And for now, y'all take care.